Hello everyone. How are you doing today? Today I wanted to talk about something that's really important because if you are studying neuromodulation, you know what they talk about with the MK Ultra experiments. They started with mind control, and it was, in this century you've seen experiments conducted by professors and PhDs and people at major universities that have done experiments with it's not just mind control though. A lot of these go as scientific research into how to calm the mind, get rid of problems. But with some funding and dark projects, they go awry in certain areas. But what I want to talk about here is current steering, anodes and cathodes in neuromodulation fields in human tissue and biological tissue anywhere. How to steer toroids, you don't have to steal them. They're only worth to the individual that's generating them from his heavenly energy, his or her. So what happens is, if you look at this picture over on the right, let me show you something here. Let me go to the well, I've only got this guy, dude, on that picture. You can't see my cursor, but look at the current steering, the blue background photo on the right northeast quadrant of my screen. You'll see what looks like some electrodes in some tissue liquid, and then to the left of that you'll see a chart, and that chart is a 3x3 looking chart like a Rubik's Cube. And at the top it has a plus, minus, plus, and then negatives down the middle. Now what that is you're looking at, that's called an example of a guarded cathode. Okay, so if you look in the middle of the screen above the word trying, there's a battery looking pacemaker thing there. I worked in a production facility that made those, and we did the sales and marketing, and I managed all of Latin America and the Caribbean and parts of Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands and the Caymans and the Bahamas and the Antilles. Hey, it was a tough job, but somebody had to do it. Oh, I had a lot of fun. That's why I don't travel much now. I've been there, done that, everything, all the continents, all the places. Anyway. So back to current steering. I was in neuromodulation. My clients were neurosurgeons for the brain, and also like anesthesiologists that were surgically trained, that had passed boards where they could be an interventional pain specialist, where they could implant electrodes, do deep injections, epidural, spinal, even joints, nerve encapsulations, things like that. ESIs, steroid injections. And I actually sold epidural needles and spinal cannulas and things like that. So if you look at this picture, what this is telling you, now let's focus back on the top right side picture, current steering. Think of, I'm going to interject for a second. If you were to look at, say, I know a lot of my followers and subscribers are flat earthers, and I investigate that a lot, and I'm scientifically trying to prove that the Earth is a sphere. But it may not even be round. I think it's more like a star pattern shape. It may have more points depending on how many cathodes. It may look like the inverted apex star of quasar. Is it the quasar logo? I'm not sure. I'll look that up later. But the negative symbol is associated with the cathode. The positive symbol is associated with the anode. So if you look at this tissue in this photo here that I've got, it is that the globular, biggest blob that you've got is the fat one at the top. There's 3 levels of electrodes. If you look at those 3 lines, those are silicone-based catheter type things that go into the body, and they've got metal caps on them that you can program. They're all wired together in a programmer on a control board with 20 channels, 30 channels and stuff. So you can turn any one of them into an anode or a cathode. Anode is positive, cathode is negative. So what I want to talk about is current steering. What we would do, the top one, the top level you see there, you have the biggest agglutination of biological tissue surrounded by two positive anodes. That's called a guarded cathode. It's like chess. When you castle and you surround yourself with the pawns and the rook. In neuromodulation, when you surround your cathode with two anodes, it becomes the guarded cathode. But what you've got two other unguarded cathodes going down. You can see the frequency diminishing as it goes down the center axis to the bottom. Most of the energy is collected around the cathodes, the negative electrode. So anytime you're putting sticking an electrode in a human body, you're going to have more that some people argue that it flows from negative to positive, which I think. But regardless of which way it flows, the electrons, the electrode around the negative point, the cathode, has always more energy and aggregation or agglutination of electrons and mass density transition. So if you want to apply this to how would the Earth work if let's say it were a plane, you put a dipole through the center and the North Pole, and you would radiate out a positive layer. Even the Van Allen belts that surround the Earth, if you expand those out and flatten them, they become the flat plane model for a lot of people. This was the way the astronomers thought, even in ancient Iran, back before the Jesuit astronomers, before Copernicus, before Galileo, before Kepler, before all of the different opinions on how far away the sun was. Let's just look. Anciently, for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, from the origins of humanity, and you look at all of the drawings in all of the continents of all of the ancient civilizations, and they have a firmament above a dome-shaped structure. Even in Egypt, look at Nut. Nut was the goddess that shows her belly stretched across with the stars in it. It's the same symbolism is always there. But if you look how it works on the Earth, the North Pole would be the anode, and the ring around the edge, as the flat earthers say, would be the cathode. But if it's not round, you could have a star pattern shape. It would explain why people see, for example, the Earth or the sunset, or even the moon set in a southwestern counterclockwise direction below the Tropic of Capricorn or toward the 33rd parallel southern hemisphere. Hemiplane. So what they're saying is, I lived in Chile. I lived in Santiago. That's where these background pictures come from. And I remember looking out of my tower, and I was looking about 238 degrees southwest. In the morning, it was early in the morning, like before the sun had just barely at dawn, between 5 and 6 in the morning. And between two other buildings downtown, this is like above the Federal Mint Palace and the Governance Palace in Santiago downtown over their federal ministry buildings. The moon set, it set counterclockwise, but it was going left, and it was between two buildings, and it was going down left in my vision. And I didn't know all of this at the time. I wasn't consciously aware of how the models worked, and I wasn't investigating this, or I wasn't trying the math, and I wasn't looking at the heliocentric model or the geocentric model or the phases of the moon or the path of the sun or the timing or anything. So, but for some reason it hit me. I had like a cognitive dissonance choke moment where my mind just said, that doesn't look right. And now when I think about it, this moon was setting counterclockwise to the southwest, and I was at Santiago, Chile, so I was at the 33rd parallel south. So, the Tropic of Capricorn is north of that. I think it's at 27.5, 27.5, south of the equator. For the winter solstice, and this was about March or April, so the sun would have been further north toward the equator, which even makes it more exaggerated and more bizarre that I was watching the moon set in the morning at dawn, moving across the horizon counterclockwise as it fell down, and it was moving across. And I took pictures. I even deleted them because I thought, I'm not going to bring that out and make people think I'm nuts. But now, with everything I know, if you look at this, this is how you create an active toroid. If you had a dipole going through the North Pole, you would put your cathodal points around the edges. Whether it's a ring or not, I don't think it's a perfect ring. I think it's kind of like a quasar star, that has the apexes inverted around the 4 points. There could be more than 4 points. Anywhere you put a cathode, like you're looking at this tissue. And by the way, don't ask me where this tissue came from, this biological tissue where we did this experiment and tried the agglutinate. It was obtained by the company I worked for at the time. Yep. I promise not to say that. I'm sorry. So anyway, above here you're going to see some pictures. My previous video was on the inverse square laws. You can see here how radio waves spread out as they go over distance. So exponentially, with that red curve going down, you see how they dissipate over distance and cannot be transmitted over long distances. So it would be impossible to transmit a frequency modulation signal from the Earth over, let's say, 400 miles. There's not enough energy on Earth. It just flattens out into an asymptote. So there's the equation I included in the top center of my graph, my screen. And so it's fun to talk to you today about electromagnetic fields, how you steer current, and how it would apply to an Earth model if there was a toroidal field that was the ceiling. It's not a dome. It's an active toroid. Look up the GIF, animated GIFs on active toroid movement. If I do it here, it's going to clog my video and make it buffer. But you guys have a good time. Thank you for coming to my video. If you made it this far, I congratulate you. Please hit like, subscribe, ring the bell, and I will see you when I post another video. Thank you. Bye.